Hey everyone, welcome to Anthem West Youth, and we, the leaders, Zach, Rachel, all of us, we are so happy that you are all here today, that you are willing to participate and just come and be a community with us. I know that Zach has been doing a message on More Than You Can Imagine, or a series on More Than You Can Imagine. And just as a recap, those have been about prayer, they've been about worship, they've been about God's love, and just how impactful, how amazing all of those things can be when we just participate in them, when we choose to have an active lifestyle in God, and how He can impact our lives, how much He can change our lives when we do that, when we participate in those things that we can only have with God. And so, anyways, again, we are so thankful. I'm so thankful that you're here today, that you're willing to listen and hear from my heart. Zach has been willing to give us an opportunity to just speak about, what is it that God is doing in your heart? What is it that He's doing in our lives? And so, if I was to say that, to scale this per se about what God is doing in our lives, or doing in my life particularly, in my heart, I would say it would have to begin during the first part of the summer, but also just during this entire summer per se. And so just to kind of start it off, God really been speaking about a word called happiness. And I don't know for you, but if you think of happiness, what is it that you think of happiness? Do you think of walking your dog in a park? Do you think about money? Do you think about spending time with someone that you love? There are a whole bunch of things in our lives that can make us think about what we are happy. And I know for me that when the pandemic wasn't happening, there were a lot of things that I got to do that made me happy. I got to play games. I got to go and attend school in person. I also got to go out and eat with people. I got to hang out with you guys. There were a lot of things that ended up making me happy. And so at that time, during that time in my life though, when the pandemic wasn't happening, I know I wasn't really thinking about, okay, well, what makes me happy? I just kind of knew it because I would tend to gravitate and go towards those things that ended up making me happy. However, when the pandemic really started to set in, when summer started to come along, school started to unwind, I didn't have as much schoolwork to do, I started realizing that a lot of the things that I didn't get to used to do that, kind of made me happy, I didn't get to do them as much. But then I also had time to go and do more of the stuff that I thought made me happy all the time, which ended up kind of being wrong. But anyways, that story kind of begins during the summer. And so school started to wind down. I started to have more time with doing the things that I love. And in particular, I ended up getting to spend a lot of time with my friend who played video games with me. And so this one thing that I thought made me happy, or I was thinking does make me happy, playing video games, I would do that a lot. I would play that all day. I would go, watch TV then with my wife or something, very late at night. Or I would just go walk my dog in the morning. And so I'd be in this constant routine per se. And then in about midsummer, I started to really think and ask myself, and I was like, man, well, you know what? These things are becoming dull. They're becoming numbing. And I'm not really happy. And so that question started to really resonate in my heart. And God started to really resonate even more and ask, well, Kolten, where does your happiness come from? And I was thinking to myself, Kolten, where does your happiness come from? And I was like, well, if I think about it, I guess, when me and my wife have children, when we get to own a house that's up on this hill area in Terrace Heights, and I have this idea about what it looks like, and, maybe we're going to live in Bellingham one day, all these things. I had these ideas about things that made me happy. And I would think about them, but then instantaneously, it would just go right out the door. And so I'd be like, man, I'm not gonna lie though, I don't feel happy, and I don't feel alive. And I would constantly though in that process to compare myself to my past. I would think, well, I was really happy back then. I was happy serving in youth. I was really happy being able to speak. I was really happy being able to hang out with my wife, who was then my friend slash girlfriend, because I was too scared to say that she was my girlfriend. But then But I would think about that, and I would ask myself, well, why am I not happy? And I would try to relive those things. I would think, okay, well, when I played video games, I'd be happy. And so I tried to relive that constantly. But the more and more I ended up doing it, the more and more I ended up realizing, like, this isn't making me happy. And so kind of going back to my friend that I was playing games with, we'd play games all day. And by the end of the day, we would be at each other's throats. We would hate each other. We just did not like each other sometimes when it came to that. And it brought out just an ugly side, a very ugly side of us. And it wasn't very loving. It wasn't very kind. And so every time that would end up happening, I would reflect back to those moments when I was happy. And I would come to that time again where I would ask myself, okay, well, what does make me happy? And God would ask me, well, what does make you happy? And then he would reveal to me more and more. And I started to realize, and I was like, you know what? This morning I ended up spending time with God, walking, or I ended up reading my word, or I ended up meditating on what he has to say about me. And so in those moments, I ended up realizing, and I was like, wow, really, really and truly, my happiness really does come from God. It comes from spending time with him. It comes from being in relationship with him. And so, for any of us, for all of us, I think some of the hard part is we want to go run. We want to go do things that make us happy. And a lot of the times they take place in this world. We think that, our friends or our girlfriend or our boyfriend or, our wife or husband, they're going to just make us happy all the time. But the truth is, it really doesn't all the time. They can for a moment, but in reality, the thing that really does make us happy, if we look at it, would be God. And so that's what God has been doing in my life. That's what God's been showing me. And so in those moments, I was just like, man, God, you really do make me happy. God, you make me full. You make me good. And so when I got to spend time with him, when I got to walk with him, when I spent time just reflecting about, God, you love me, you care for me, and you want me to be something. You are calling me to be a pastor. You're calling me to speak. These things that were encouraging. Colton, you have authority. You can do that stuff. I felt happy. I felt encouraged. And so those doubts and things where I thought, oh man, I was going to be is a teacher the way? Is that house? But the reality is that when I give those things to God, when I say, God, I give you my house, I give you this idea, I give you this idea of happiness, or if I do this in you, I really will be happy. And so I realized that when I gave that to God, when I give God the idea of me being a teacher, when I give him the idea of being on the house, that I really am. I become happy. And so all of that depression, all of the worry, all that stuff, it goes away. And God can give me and fulfill me with his peace and his joy and his love and his encouragement. And we are able to really experience the true happiness of what God has for us. And so I hope that's been encouraging. I hope that has been a word for you. And I hope that you can see what God has been doing in my life and in my heart. That he's been showing me that, man, when I walk with him, when I get to be with him, when I realize, that he calls me his son and he loves me, and I reflect and I just spend time with him, that's the real joy. That's the real peace. That's the real happiness that I get to have with him. And so I want to encourage you, there's no one way to do that with God. You don't just have to sit down. You don't just have to pray. You don't just have to worship. Sometimes it just looks like meditating on what God has to say about you, reading his word, maybe just worshiping, maybe just praying. There's no one way of experiencing God's true happiness, because the reality is when we take the things that we once saw as meaningless and we do them in Christ, they become fulfilling. That one day in his court becomes better than 1,000 elsewhere, because we're giving it and we're devoting it to God, because we are able to receive his true joy, his true peace, those things that make us happy, that love. And we end up wanting to do that more and more when we give those things over to him. And so I hope that's been encouraging. And if you allow me, I'm just going to pray. So Father, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to do something that I really do love to do, that I get to do with you, that I get to practice on,
But I also just want to say, I lift them up to you, Father. I lift them up that they would just be able to feel your peace, your encouragement, and your joy in these times. And as we give more and more of our life to you, as we give more and more of the things that we do to you, that you reveal more and more of the joy and the peace and the happiness that you have for us, Father, because you really do love us and you care about us and you want to be in relationship with us. And so I ask that we would seek you out like any good relationship and realize how much of a life that we can have being in relationship with you, Father. In your amazing name, amen. Thank you, guys. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. And again, all of us at West Youth, your leaders, Zach and Rachel, we love you, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.